Welcome back to the Bionicle Inspiration series. Much like Makuta returning to Barra Magna, we're back, baby. And today, what we're going to be talking about is guns. So I've done a few episodes related to guns with Bionicle mocks before, but I wanted today's episode to be a little bit different, because of course you can easily go back and watch those gun episodes and get specific inspiration from them. But if I tackle it from a different perspective, you can get even more inspiration from this episode, and that's always a fun thing to do. So, how am I going to tackle this differently? Today, with guns, I want them to specifically focus on how the gun itself can influence the character design. Because you take a look at a lot of different characters from movies or TV shows and things, often their weapon can say quite a lot about them. Whether it's a sword in Game of Thrones, a Mandalorian with a cool blaster, even if we move away from guns, a lightsaber like Kylo Ren's lightsaber can say a lot about the character. There's a lot of sort of stuff that you can gain from that. That's just kind of the nature of character design in movies and TV shows and a lot of different storytelling. So what sort of stuff can we learn from that, and how can we put that into our mocks? So if you are going to add a gun to a character, what can you do to really make it pop, really make it stand out, and how can it actually drastically improve your mock as well? Because, hey, it's always cool when a weapon or some part of a mock can really seriously improve the overall design. So we'll talk a bit about that today with 6 different Bionicle mocks. Let's go! The first mock we've got today is by Joxon, and it's called Captain John Piplfox. So the gun on this mock here is this really awesome sort of pirate gun, kind of blunderbuss thing. And you might look at it and be like, that's not a Lego piece, come on now. Well, it is. So here it is on Bricklink. This is actually from some Duplo sets, 3 Duplo sets to be precise. I love that something as child-friendly and young as Duplo as the theme has what is a really awesome pirate gun in it. That doesn't really seem to fit the theme, but I love that it exists. And it's actually just in general a really solid, nice piece. Nicely detailed, just looks nice, very accurate looking. And so I like the idea of getting some really obscure, weird Lego piece like this blunderbuss and making that inform a mock. When I was in uni and I had a specific assessment for a photography class I did, the whole assessment, or a part of it, was they gave you 4 words and you just had to take a picture based off of those words. So stuff like, I think it was fluffy, car, and other words. I don't remember what it was, it's irrelevant what they were. But it was a really interesting sort of stimulus to making art. And sometimes some of the words are a little bit more difficult, some of them are really fun, but it also helped me to kind of take pictures that were really kind of outside my comfort zone, or make something that I hadn't really thought to do in the past, or just, if the assessment had been take whatever kind of picture you want, but it has to fit with these technical criteria or something, I might have struggled a bit more, but because these sort of stimuluses and these ideas were kind of forced on me, it was okay, actually, yeah, no, I could do that. So with that in mind, this Duplo gun piece here, I imagine this was sort of the stimulus for Joxon in making this mock. Could you sort of do something similar yourself? Look through your collection, maybe buy some new pieces, or buy a brand new set that has some weird pieces in it, and specifically look at those weird pieces and go, man, I honestly don't know how to use this. And because of that, that's why I'm going to build something with it. Kind of putting those restrictions on yourself and seeing if those restrictions can help to get you thinking outside the box and really kind of force you to create, Of course, there's no use kind of, pushing a rock up a hill that's just going to roll down anyway. If you do sort of put that stimulus on yourself and it's just too hard, obviously you don't have to do it, but this could just be a fun little challenge. And I like the idea of doing that with really weird, odd, obscure pieces that you have no idea how to use, but you find a way. Or you do something like this, where it's still a weird and obscure piece, but it is a little bit more easier to use. And, hey, you found this cool pirate gun, let's build a pirate mock to accompany it. And I think that's the point. We wanted to talk today about how the guns can influence the character design. Well, this gun piece very much fits with this pirate mock here. It looks like a pirate gun, it fits with the character, You could, make your own kind of custom version of this gun or something. You'd probably still do a pretty good job. But hey, this is perfect for a pirate. Why not? Give the pirate exactly what he would have, We see a whole variety of different guns across a whole bunch of mocks that I've covered, and some of them can be very accurate to real-world guns, some of them can just be their own kind of custom guns. But hey, if you can really theme it to how the gun would look for the specific character, whether it's a real character or not, from fiction or the real world, it's a great idea. So the absurdity of a piece and the accuracy of a piece could be a nice little stimulus for our character here. And the fact too that it is sort of more comically shaped and a little bit more sort of, larger and weird, kind of more in line with Duplo. I think it also fits the personality of this pirate here, He looks a little bit more friendly. I could almost see him as some sort of Disney character or an animated pirate that you might see on some sort of kids cartoon or something. I love that those two kind of go hand in hand. It's like how large his hands and his wrists are there. He looks a little bit like a cartoon character. So, again, using that Duplo piece here and really playing off the kind of kiddie qualities that Duplo naturally has to form a sort of more friendly, fun kind of captain here. I really like that. So let's talk about this captain. Some really fantastic part usages also on this pirate here, whether that's using that Hero Factory chest piece upside down as a pirate hat. That's a great part use. Or using Nex 3.0 from the Jungle Wave of Hero Factory sets, using his mask in orange there to form the kind of bulk of his beard. And also even using some of those orange claw pieces to form like the mustache and the eyebrows as well. Those all kind of work in unison there and form just a lovely amount of facial hair on this character here. I think that really kind of brings out his personality as well, all that different facial hair. Additionally, too, using some system pieces to kind of form the flowing aspects of this pirate coat design works really, really well, and always nice to use a little bit of system here and there on a mock. And overall just a brilliant little character design with a lot of really lovely little details on it. It's a classic of our good boy Joxon here. He's done a phenomenal job. So yeah, really cool to see that gun informing so much of this character. Let's move on to the next mock now. It's called Johnny Six Guns, and this is by King Marshy. So certainly one thing with just kind of guns in general, I mean specifically with guns on mocks, is that there is kind of specific tropes that you can kind of have when you use a gun. A lot of people really like the idea of, a badass with a gun, like the Mandalorian. He's a lone gunslinger, he's super cool, and it's like a Western movie with a cowboy or something when they have their hand hovering over their gun and they whip it out and shoot someone. They're a badass. They've got guns. They're super, super cool because of it, Any good action movie, a hero will have a gun or a blaster or something, and they're super cool. Han Solo's iconic blaster, it makes the character, And so I love the fact that this mock is kind of sort of leaning into that and then really just making it even more over the top, It's like, not only does he have one gun, he has 6 guns. That's how cool he is. And he's got 6 arms, and he's smoking a cigar, because why not, I think that's fun. I think it's really unique, really different, and just really creative, really clever. There's nothing wrong with really going super over the top with a concept or a design. And heck, if you can go super over the top with your guns and allow that to affect the personality of the character as well, go to town. What a great idea, It's like, I don't actually have any in this episode, but if you can give your mock a giant rocket launcher or just some super massive laser or something, it's going to say something about them. Maybe they're an evil scientist and they've created a giant super laser that they threaten the world with or something. There's a lot of different possibilities you can do there. So, big gun, does it mean they're a big man or a small man and they're compensating? Hey, who knows? It's good fun. And so I like that about this mock here. I like too that he does have a lot of kind of cowboy tropes with him too. The idea of a cowboy and his gun, like I was saying before. And also, too, there's just a lot of really awesome cowboy sort of things on this character here, whether it's his awesome kind of cowboy cap, his little hat there, fedora, and also just kind of the general, I don't really know what you'd call it, but whatever his sort of like poncho shirty thing is there, it does have little notes of being a little bit more Western-like in nature, and it's pretty cool. So I do definitely like that idea of building a cowboy, and again, like I said, a cowboy is very synonymous with the gun, so that's how those two kind of can go hand in hand there, and the gun can inform the character in some fashion. Even if it's just a little bit more subtle, it can still work. So let's actually talk about these guns, because there's some clever stuff going on with them. If we take a look at the kind of handle there of the gun, the bit you kind of grip, I don't know terms for guns, I'm sorry, maybe I'm uneducated to do this episode, but hey, the brown bit. That part of it is made using, now we always talk about those X-Force bad guy robot arm pieces. The pieces you always see used on fingers for a mock. Ironically, they're not used on this mock here, but we talk about those all the time in the Bionicle Inspiration series. If you don't know what they are at this point, honestly, watch like any episode of this show, you'll probably see them in it. But, for the first time ever, at least that I can remember, we are using the feet or the legs for those Exoforce robots here, instead of the arms. And they're being used here for the handle part of the gun there in that sort of metallic brown color. It's awesome. It's really, really cool to see. And I think that part works perfectly for the kind of general shape of that part of a gun. Very, very nice part use there. Additionally, too, using some tires and other different sort of barrel-shaped pieces there to kind of form the different parts of the gun as well. Very effective. It's just, honestly, it's a really, really nice gun design, and it's even cooler to see it done 6 times. Additionally, like I said, I already talked about the hat and the other parts of this mock. Those look fantastic, but I also like the head design here. Very similar to Cube Dudes, which was, well, some of them did appear in LEGO sets, but it was kind of this concept that it was just, you just see it across the AFOL community where people will build a head design on an angle like that so that it sort of naturally forms the shape of a nose, and you can kind of have the mouth sort of stretch across both sides. It's just an interesting way of designing a head design that I think actually works really well and looks super cool here. Just a great way to design a more humanoid-like head there. Additionally, too, he is smoking that cigar. Don't smoke, kids, but hey, you know, this Western cowboy here, it fits him well, it fits his personality well, so it works. But don't smoke. Anyway, yeah, great mock. Really cool to see those guns being put to good use here and creating, helping to really create a really unique personality for this cowboy gunslinger mock here. Let's move on to the next mock now. This is by Green Axles, and it's called the Puckle gun. So, yeah, I know this whole episode is about talking about how guns can inform the character of a mock, but I always like to say this whenever I do any episode and I have sort of like a quote-unquote rule for the episode, or at least a kind of concept that I'm talking about. You don't have to always do that concept, because you can build however you want, and that's totally fine, in all honesty. And that's exactly what this mock is doing here. So, Mr. Green Axles, it says in the description on this mock that this was built for a specific contest, and he was trying to rebuild a specific realistic gun from the real world. So I'll just read part of the description. He said, this round's challenge, the round for the contest that I was speaking about, was to make a pre-19th century firearm. After scrolling through a list on Wikipedia, I finally found a gun which had a rather interesting design, the Puckle gun, named after its creator, James Puckle. This weapon was one of the very first machine guns, even though it would not be considered one by modern standards. And so it goes on there, but hey, you can check out the post yourself and read some of the other things he says there, and he also has links to the Wikipedia page if you're interested. But hey, I love the idea of doing that. Why not just build a historic replica of a real-world gun and just do your best to be super, super accurate towards it? Because, hey, there's a whole bunch of gun enthusiasts out there, and it's just, you know, a fun thing to build if that's up your alley. So why not do that? And yes, like I said, you know, we're talking about how guns can influence a specific character. You know what? Maybe you just want to give your mock a really cool gun, and you're not specifically doing it for any reason. You just want to give them a cool gun. Why not? You know? There's literally nothing wrong with that. And it could be like one of those cool things where, you know, for example, a weird reference, but it relates. David Lynch, a very sort of out there movie director, he does a lot of sort of very weird, uncanny stuff in a lot of his movies and things. And Laura Dern was talking to him once and was like, that one scene that you did in the movie with, I think it was with meat or something, I don't remember. But she was like, that was just like, he was so inspired, like the amount of symbolism that was behind that was genius, like great work. And then David Lynch was like, yep, totally deliberately did that. Yep, I just had an impulse and just decided to put that on the screen. I had no justification, I just thought it worked. And then she was like, oh, well, I found heaps of symbolism behind that, so that's great, you know? So maybe that's exactly what could happen with your mock, you know? I can sit there and review it on the show and be like, oh my god, what a creative, clever decision, genius to think of this and do this, and you can be sitting there like, I just put a gun on my mock. There was no deliberate choice behind that. I just thought it would look cool, but I'm glad you found that, you know? You can get a lot of happy accidents with creativity, and I think, honestly, that's such a beautiful thing with creativity is you listen to those inner impulses, you listen to what your heart wants to do, you put the gun on your mock because you think it's cool, and it works. Why not, you know? So, yes, you can do what this episode's talking about, have a lot of symbolism behind your choice of weapon, really give your mock a specific weapon so that it really accentuates their character, or you could just give them a cool gun, because why not? You know? It's up to you. Do what you want to do. But anyway, let's talk about this gun. So, side note, By the time I release this episode, I think it will have just been Halloween. Halloween might have passed. I should have done a Halloween episode. My bad. But hey, I've done past Halloween episodes. Go check those ones out. But still, hey, this gun is being operated by a skeleton man. Very fitting for Halloween. Boom, there you go. The gun itself, though, has some cool little part usages here. So the actual kind of main barrel of it is using a more distinct piece. It's a 1x1x6 sort of like pillar part. So that sort of long sort of cylinder area there. And then it ends on that kind of 1x1 brick. That is all one long piece there. It's just a unique piece, and I think actually works quite well for the barrel of a gun. Additionally, too, using some of those sort of medium-sized claw pieces there in dark tan. That looks fantastic. Great little part use for that. And then designing the sort of the legs, the kind of tripod design for this machine gun here, using the triaxle piece to connect all of those onto the sort of main pillar that reaches up to the gun itself. Hey, triaxles, very, very helpful piece. Very helpful indeed. Definitely one of those pieces if you're looking for, maybe you're planning to do a Bricklink order soon and you're like, what pieces should I buy to help me with mocking? Those triaxle pieces, they're very helpful, man, because you can do stuff like this, where you have 3 legs at adjacent angles like that, and it just works really well. So, hey, clever little stuff going on this very accurate version of the Puckle gun, which I first read it as Pickle gun, and I was like, yeah, why not, So, hey, really, really cool. Let's move on to the next mock now. This is by Max Howell, and it's called Cityscape Infantry Unit. So back to talking about how a gun can really influence the character design of a mock. First, let's read the description so we can see how. So the description on this mock says, an old firefighting drone repurposed for combat. I like that. I like that a lot, especially because I look at this and I can see that, whether it's down to the color scheme or just kind of the general look of it. I could see that it would be an old firefighting robot of some kind. It just seems fitting. And I almost like the idea that this gun, when you look at it, you're like, actually, I could see water coming out of that it's some sort of, mechanical fire hose that you would see on some sort of science fiction, futuristic fire drone robot thing. I like that a lot. And so I also like the idea that, it's been repurposed and now that is just an actual physical gun. But, I don't know, it's, at least the way I see this mock, I see the aspects of it being a firefighting drone and I see the aspects of it being now a military drone. And it does have that beautiful blend of the two, and I think the weapon works really well for that because I can see it being used in both contexts. So, hey, love that idea, and, that's also another thing to think about too. One little sentence when you post the mock on the description there can really add a lot to it, That's a cool thing. So yeah, a fantastic little firefighting military drone here. Let's talk about some of the cool stuff going on with the mock. So we take a look at the head design here. It's using 2 of the hand pieces that you saw on the original Tahu Mutta set. They also came in green on Liwa, and I'm sure they've come in a whole bunch of other different colors and a whole bunch of other sets as well. They're a fun little piece. Not that common of a piece though anymore, to be honest. They kind of just stopped making that part. But it works so well as a head design here. It really does give it this beautiful sort of sci-fi futuristic drone-like feeling to it. It just looks really cool. And additionally, those pieces are being used there to form the waist of this mock. Just a very different waist design, very unique, very awesome. And cool to see that part being used in 2 areas of this mock here. So all the different parts of this mock really sort of just tie together in a beautiful unison here. It's very nice to see. So I like that a lot. And I just like a lot about this mock, honestly. It's just very nice, subtle, simple, using some different Hero Factory pieces, Technic pieces and stuff. And it just gets the job done. I know there's a lot of nice little story elements packed into this guy here. I think it's very cool. So that's awesome. Let's move on to the next mock here. This is by Sasquatch, and it's called Halo 4 Grunt. So of course this is inspired by the video game Halo, and this is a grunt from Halo. A game which I have played, but it's been a while, I feel like there was a time where I'd be able to name the name of the gun that this Halo grunt has, and that time has passed. However, I know that you listening will know, so you can sit there in front of your computer and say, hey, I know that name, and you can feel that satisfaction and go, I know something Ben doesn't. And you can smile, you can pat yourself on the back and feel good about yourself, because hey, you're smart. Good job. I like you. But I don't know the name of this gun. And you know what? I'm not going to Google it because I want you to feel good. I want you to know that you're smart and you know what this gun is. Good job. You know something about a video game and that brings you joy and you should feel good. I'm not being sarcastic here, by the way. Not at all. Genuinely, I think it's awesome, People can mock you for being like, oh, cool, you know so much about a sci-fi world and not the real world. Oh, no, man. That's cool. It brings you joy. Be happy about that. So, hey, you know the name of this gun. Good job. Or you don't, and that's fine too, you know? But hey, having played Halo, I know the general aesthetic of some of the Covenant guns, and this matches that aesthetic very well. It uses some of the, I believe they're violet in color, these specific pieces, and honestly, that specific color kind of only really came on the Technic Jango Fett set. And honestly, that Technic Jango Fett set, a little bit of an older set, probably would have come out about, what, 2002 when Attack of the Clones came out-ish, around about that time, anywhere from 2002 to 2005, I don't fully remember. But it's a great little set, and it had some very unique colored pieces in it. And honestly, that kind of violet color, I think, is perfect for general kind of Covenant-style weapons and ships and things. So if you are planning on building a Halo mock, maybe you can invest in that Jango Fett set and use some of those pieces. Or just use any kind of shade of purple. There's a whole bunch of different shades of purple, and they'd work perfect for any kind of Halo gun there. But going back to the general crux of this episode, so these, of course, are inspired by the video game Halo. And there's a whole bunch of different video games, movies, and things out there, like I've said before, and you can get a lot of different inspiration from those video games and movies. And, you know, often in, I don't think it's the case here with a Grunt from Halo, but often in those games, the weapons can have a lot of symbolism for the characters, can be very personal to the characters, or can have a rich sort of backstory and lore to them, and they can inform how the character looks, reacts, feels, their story, all sorts of stuff like that. So, by all means, draw upon your knowledge of video games. Like I said before, you're very knowledgeable with video games, good job. And design guns from those games. Design characters from those games. And allow that to inform the character in some fashion. Because, hey, it's a fun thing to do. It's a great idea. Do it. Why not? And using that violet color is a very smart idea. So we'll briefly talk about this Halo Grunt now. It's very accurate, very realistic towards the source material. I love the use of all these different tire pieces without the actual rubber tire around them being used as the kind of breath mask that those grunts have there. And also to the use of that Mictoran headpiece there to form the kind of like, I don't know, helmet or sort of bulk of his actual head there. And that's just a very clever, very effective part use. It appears that that's mainly just connected with those rubber bands there. Those rubber bands may just be placed on there just for aesthetical purposes. I don't really know. But, you know, hey, if you can't attach it, just attach it with rubber bands. There's nothing that wrong with it, you know. Some people might get upset that it's not officially attached, but, you know, does it make you happy? Is it like your knowledge with video games where you do know a lot and that's a good thing? Well, you can put rubber bands on a mock and that's how you get that connection and it makes you happy and you're fine with that. Do it, man. Do it, man. If it brings you joy, that's all that matters. I like, too, the use of some of those tail pieces in lime to kind of form this sort of curve on the back that a grunt normally has. They do have that sort of like camel-like hunch on the back of their backs. And, you know, hey, that's how they're shaped. I ain't going to shame them on the way that their body looks, because it's cool. And hey, I think that's a really good way of depicting it there, using those tail pieces that have that natural curve to them so that you can effectively recreate that. It's awesome, man. It's really cool. I think this is a fantastic little grunt here, and I think that's also a fantastic gun, and the two work hand in hand there with your video game inspiration, and that's very key when you're focusing on how a gun can influence a character. Depending on the video game, of course. It could just be that, they've just got a random gun, but you know, hey, that's the thing you can do. So there you go, second last mock, on to now the final mock in this episode. And this is by Ron Folkers, and this is his mock, Sekron, and this is version 2 of his self-mock. So what I like about this, again, actually, let me read the description on this mock first before I talk about it. So to kind of paraphrase it here, he says that this mock is a sort of superhero who over time has put together sort of armor and upgraded pieces and things onto himself to kind of make him stronger. And he can switch between like his cool energy sword and the guns on his shoulders, all sorts of things like that. So to some degree, he's a little bit like Iron Man, and I can see little bits of inspiration from Iron Man here. Of course, maybe this mock wasn't actually inspired by Iron Man. I know sometimes it can be frustrating when someone's like, hey, this mock is clearly inspired by this. And you're like, no, it's just, yeah, look, okay, maybe it's slightly similar, but it's not actually, you know. But just for the sake of the argument that I'm about to say in terms of what this episode's all about, we'll say that it is slightly inspired by Iron Man here. So, you know, all the other mocks that we saw in today's episode, they were holding their guns, they were handheld weapons. But never forget that you can actually have guns be a part of the armor or a part of the body. Again, similar to Iron Man. So, like they say here in the description, it's on his shoulder there. It sort of pops up, shoots around like that. I guess you could argue that's actually a bit more similar to War Machine there, but whatever. But I like that idea, you know? The gun is on the shoulder there. It's a little bit different. So what does that sort of say about this mock? Well, exactly what that description said there. He has this more sort of unique high-tech armor. He's designed weapons that come out of unique parts of his body and stuff like that. He's different. He's futuristic. He is unique. And that's awesome. It really is. So that sort of thing. Can you design some sort of weapon that communicates, I don't know, I guess the time period or the occupation of the character? Is this mock a little bit more sort of sci-fi, scientific, of the future? And so because of that, well, what sort of unique technology does he have that would be fitting of the time period he's from? Or are they just incredibly smart and they've developed this really unique armor? Well, how can you sort of showcase that with the choice of a gun? You know, like this is a funky cool gun that pops out of a shoulder like that. It's unique and it's different. When I first picked this mock, I sort of wasn't sure if the kind of blade arm that he's got there sort of acted as both a blade and a gun. You know, maybe it obviously can slice things up, but also because it is this sort of trans neon green, maybe it kind of charges up with electricity and kind of fires out some sort of energy pulse or something. So it could act as, you know, both. And, you know, I don't know if that's actually a part of the backstory or not. Maybe now that I've said that, Ron will be like, oh, great idea, it is now. But, you know, that's another option to consider. Can you have a weapon also be a gun? And then what could that say about the character or the time period they're from, all that sort of stuff. So, hey, you know, like I said, it's little stuff to think about. It can be really subtle stuff too sometimes, but definitely weapons can have at least some sort of impact on the general presentation of a mock and what all the different elements of it are communicating. So that's that. Let's talk about some of the nitty-gritty details on this mock here. So it's using this really interesting head design here where it's taking a Lego windshield piece. You found some of those sort of pieces on like Atlantis sets, even some like Star Wars sets, all sorts of different stuff really. And obviously, of course, those windshield pieces come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes as well. But they work really well on a Bionicle mock here because it kind of gives it this almost sort of astronaut sort of style head design there. It looks like he's got some sort of helmet on that has a kind of clear visor of sorts. And I don't know, to me, it does give him this more unique sort of, sci-fi feeling. And, you know, it's like we said before with the gun. The gun does communicate elements of sci-fi, so does this helmet. You know, in a bunch of different episodes before, we've spoken about how a little element, a color scheme, a specific part of a mock, all that sort of stuff can communicate character. Well, there's no reason the gun doesn't fit in with that too. So, hey, you know, there you go. But I love that idea. You know, grab some of those windshield pieces that you could find on a variety of different sets and use them for a head design on a Bionicle mock. Because like we see here, it works pretty well. I still love too the choice of a whole bunch of system being used on the thighs of this mock here. You know, some of those sort of chi-slope grill pieces that are being used towards the top of the legs in dark green. And in general, just a whole bunch of these different kind of curved slope pieces, tiles and plates put together like that creates a fantastic looking leg design there. You know, it's using a bunch of different pieces there. But it does look a lot more sort of mechanical, a bit like a robot suit, just in the nature of how it's built, how it looks. And honestly, it's pretty cool. So dig out some of your system, do something very similar to that if you want to go towards a sort of similar aesthetic there. But overall, I really like the general kind of design of this mock, looking very sci-fi in nature, and just the cool weapons that he has and the cool head design that he has. They all work well together in unison and create a fantastic looking mock. So there you go, that's been a whole bunch of different mocks with some pretty cool guns, and guns that say something about the character, even if it is a little bit more subtle. So that's it for today's episode. If you like the mocks you saw today, you can check out some of the other mocks that these builders have made if you head to the links in the description below. Click on those, see all the other stuff that they've built, and maybe leave some comments and some likes and all those sorts of things on the mocks as well, because I'm sure the builders who made them will appreciate that. Additionally too, if you liked seeing mocks on this show and you're like, I'd like to see my mock on this show, here is the submission email. It's on your screen right now. If you send an email with some images or whatever information you want to put in an email, you send it my way, it'll be added to the list, and one day I'll put it on the show. But bear in mind that will take a bit of time because I do have a lot of submissions to work through, but I do my best to include submissions in every episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series where I can. Also in the description below are links to my social media, so if you want to see some of the other stuff that I've got going on, you can check out the social medias and see all of that stuff there. I'm in my last few weeks of study for university, and then I graduate, so the next sort of like 2 or 3 weeks are pretty busy for me. I'll still have time to record Bionicle Inspiration series episodes, of course, but once that's down, I want to be really pumping out some really unique content over on the old social medias. So definitely stay tuned for that. But that doesn't mean you won't be getting content now. I do have a backlog of older sort of photos and things that I can be uploading. Older in terms of I took the pictures a while back. I took a whole bunch of pictures, did a big old photo shoot, and so I'm just working through my way of posting those. So you can stay tuned for that. But also, you can stay tuned for some of the projects that I've been doing at university, because Ben's been real clever and has managed to do LEGO-related projects for his university assessments. So once those have been marked and graded, it means I can post them. And there's some pretty cool stuff there, some really unique mocks and some really unique concepts. So do stay tuned for that. There's some awesome stuff coming your way soon that I've done. So get ready for that. And also get ready for some more unique, different YouTube videos once I've graduated as well, because I'll have time to do them when I'm not knee-deep in assessments. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. Thank you, and good night.